Hi, I'm Alison Bukowski, and this is the CustomerX Files. Professionally speaking, my background is rooted in marketing, but last year I ditched the CMO career path and followed my true passion, putting the customer at the forefront of business strategy. You could say I'm all in on the overall customer experience. As I always say, we are people before we're professionals, so personally speaking, you'll often find me spending time with my teenage daughters, traveling, cooking, exploring thrift shops, or hiking on secluded trails. Tom Petty fills up much of my playlist, British programming is often on TV, and as an English major, oddly, my reading list is surprisingly short. But there's only so many hours in the day, the cats knock my book away, or the dogs are begging for me to take them for a walk. More importantly, thank you. Thank you for joining me each and every episode with my incredible guests. We're so happy to have you here and so happy to have you join the conversation. Hello, everybody. I am very excited to welcome Kristin Sanderson to the show today. Kristin currently directs a global reference program, but her career in advocacy actually began long before the term advocacy even existed. So we have that in common, and we've chatted a little bit about that. And this isn't surprising that, remember, we're people before professionals. So Kristin is actually a published author herself. So not shocking that she loves telling stories in her professional realm as well. Stories that bring people together, who are able to solve problems, create opportunities, and focus on building a brand, which I think is super exciting. And over the course of Kristin's career, she's developed a lot of strategies for success, and we'll talk about some of those today. She's experimented with new processes. She knows what works and what doesn't. And she's maintained that relentless focus on customer value. So, as I mentioned, she's not only a CMA wizard, but she also has published a novel. She is working on a second novel. So I'm kind of fangirling a little bit, Kristin, as you know, because I'm in awe of something that it's on my bucket list. It probably won't happen, and you've done it. So welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here.
Oh, thank you, Alison. It's great to join you today.
So because of that, before we talk about metrics, and that's what the relationships and metrics are going to be the bulk of our conversation, but I do have to ask a personal question. So I ordered a copy of your novel.
Bless you.
And it will be here tomorrow. And I'm really excited to dive in because when I was like, oh my goodness, and then I'm going to have my daughter read it because the topic just sounds super fun and exciting. But I really would love to know what sparked it for you. What made you decide, yep, I'm doing it. I'm going to write a book.
It was a bit of a journey. I started trying to write some children's stories when my youngest was going through a phase of not wanting to read anything. So I wanted to craft him his own stories. And I was not very good at the children's stories. So I gave it some thought. And one night I had this crazy dream, and I woke up and realized I couldn't get out of my head and realized that's what I'm going to write. And it was very much based on the genres that I love reading. And so I think it had been bubbling up for a while, but I had a lot of fun with it.
I love it. And I'm so excited to read it. You mentioned the genre, so it's kind of like a psychological thriller, kind of a bit of mystery and suspense, at least from what I read of the reviews online.
A little history and a little bit of supernatural, getting into what is possible that we don't really know, because I'm a sci-fi fan too. So just had to explore in all the different directions.
I love it. I'm so excited. So there you go. You can, after listening today, you can go get your own copy as well. But as promised, so we're taking a sharp turn, and we're going from the supernatural to something very tangible, which is metrics. But even though we're going to talk about metrics today and measurement, how we succeed, how do we secure what we need for the day to day, but then how do we leverage, some of that data to be successful? However, you and I, when we were chatting, we firmly believe in the importance of relationships, and you've done an exceptional job at leveraging relationships to help drive some of the data and results. So I'd actually like to start our conversation with the people, if that's all right with you. And tell me a little bit about your key internal stakeholders and and talk a little bit about the relationship with each and how that was built.
Sure. The internal stakeholders are, I think, just as important to me as those external customers. I see them all as people that I serve so they can be their best. And when I look at the internal folks, our sales teams and our customer service managers, they have their own goals. They have a lot on their plate. And I'm always trying to do whatever I can to be the best part of their day so that they trust our relationship. They trust when I reach out to their customer that I am doing the right thing for the company and for their customer. And so working on those relationships is just ongoing. It's fantastic when someone new comes onto an account. A lot of times I've built a relationship with the customer that I can then work that new account team member into. And so I add value to the organization in that way by being a continuous presence across a customer experience. And, in the tech world, there's a lot of change. There's a lot of movement. So any continuity is great for relationship building.
And we know the one thing that's always constant is change.
Absolutely.
And I love that you call that out, that when you can build those relationships with external customers, when that change happens internally, you can actually be a constant for the customer, but then also really a value add to somebody that's new in the organization or changing roles. I love what you said about they're equally as important. I couldn't agree more. What have you found, and maybe we'll dive into the change part specifically, but what methods have you found to be successful when you're trying to build those trusted relationships with stakeholders?
Showing up and doing what you say you're going to do. I mean, it's I wouldn't say it's anything magic. It's following through and being accountable to them. And then again, always trying to find a way to deliver more than they even asked for. If they asked for a list of ideas, then I want to offer them a few assets in addition that maybe they haven't thought about. Our team has kind of been an internal librarian for the company at many times, where we go dig for that customer data outside of someone's industry and help them think outside of the box and not say, oh, I must talk to another bank because I'm working with a bank. Well, there are other industries that face the same challenges, dealing with fraud, et cetera. And so why not lean on experience where experience has been successful, regardless of industry? So that librarian relationship in terms of delivering additional information. And then I've kind of lost track of what my second point there was. Maybe you want to ask me to follow up on that.
Well, you bring up a good point, and I like that we get really stuck, I think, on, which persona and which industry, and to think about, but we're also humans and having shared experiences, and those can cross industries. And I don't know if this was where you were going, but as you were talking, I was thinking about, these methods, right, of kind of connecting or sharing information with those stakeholders that maybe they wouldn't think about. I'm going out on a limb. I assume you work with sales, obviously. I know that. And also with marketing as well. And then I imagine you also, in a customer success type function or something like that within the organization. And I'm wondering, what are things that work across? And then what are some kind of tips for those individual stakeholders that maybe you've had more success? Like, with sales, this is really important, or with marketing, this is important.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Great question then. I would say the story is what's important. Whether I am supporting someone on the analyst team who needs to deliver on a report, or it's that sales function, or part of our team includes our executive briefing center. So we want to bring stories into bear on all of those experiences, because the story is what sticks with people. It's not the data. As much as we are a data company, the numbers get lost in the mix, but the story always sticks with them. And so if you can humanize what has taken place and the value to real people that come out of the actions taken, that is what people remember, and they can carry with them from project to project, from account to account.
I love that. And how have you had success with figuring out what is that thing that matters to the stakeholders so that you can not only build trust with them, but then also deliver what they need?
Communication consistently about the stories that are out there and what those values are, the business outcomes, doing office hours, sharing information and sales updates. I'm thinking of a new idea where maybe we bring our customers in and have them present internally so that they hear it directly from the customer's mouth. Because once again, it's a story and it's being shared directly from the owner of that story. And so I think that will build relationships between account managers within different industries as they get to meet customers outside of their wheelhouse. Because you do see transitions throughout an organization. Someone could move from a communications support to into insurance. And so if they have familiarity with those stories and feel comfortable telling them across industry or across scale, then they'll feel more comfortable in what they can deliver off the cuff without having to come back and do all the research and then deliver it in a very stale or PowerPoint, God forbid, format.
It's kind of like the, teach them to fish sort of analogy. And I love that you're thinking about outside in. And what I mean by that is let the outside, the customers, infiltrate internally. I think we're so naturally, right? We're focused in customer advocacy on telling the customer stories and pushing it outward as a mechanism for sales and education and brand awareness and all of those good things. But doing that internally, that's so smart. And also what I love that you said about let them hear that and let them process that story. And you earlier alluded to, and I love it, everyone can find something in a story and that relates to them. And then they do feel more confident and empowered to be able to take that forward. So I want to hear about that when you launch that and how that goes, because that's fantastic. Have you done it yet? Or is it?
No, I've been socializing it with sales teams to make sure they'll actually show up to listen because, they're busy folks. And so far they've said, yes, I want to do it. So I'm looking to balance our external roundtables where customers are talking to each other and sharing directly externally with what that demand will be internally as well.
And I know that you and I have chatted in the past about, because we were talking about interviewing and how important it is to ask questions, right? To kind of get at, talk a little bit about maybe specifically even what are some of the questions that you ask your internal stakeholders to really better understand what it is they need from the relationship with customer advocacy?
Yeah, we have kind of a standardized form that we start the conversation with, and then we dig in from there. We ask them clarifying questions, such as you've asked for them to show the value. Well, tell me, what value are you talking about? Are we talking about ROI? Are we talking about growth? Are we just saying that someone was able to do their job better? Define what you mean here. Because I find that a lot of times the internal audience, they don't always know what they're looking for. And so you do have to be a little bit of an investigator and just ask those clarifying points on each of the 5 or 6 topics they've sent in your initial agenda. I would say the business outcomes for us have been a real area of growth where we're all as an organization trying to understand what those business outcomes could look like. Because we are a global company serving every industry around the world. And so you can't just say, well, which of these 10 business outcomes are you doing? We're talking about thousands of opportunities. So narrowing that down into a consumable way, and a way where we can make the matches that need to happen to fulfill the request, can sometimes be a challenge, but that's also the fun of it too. It would be really boring if it was just push a button and there you go. This is the perfect person for you. No, I have to know who is on each end of that conversation.
And I'm hearing, because I know one of the challenges when I speak to our customers or others in this space is one, just narrowing it down, as you're sort of describing. First you identifying the gaps and where do you need to focus, and then narrowing down what's a very big list. And it sounds like you've had a lot of success, and it seems simple, but it's not done often, and it's not done well through conversations and actually pushing a little bit harder on ask the questions, find out the why. Why is it needed? And then does that help you with then prioritizing?
It does, because if we don't have the right fit, then I have an immediate action to go find the right fit that I know is going to benefit the program in the long term. And that helps me with my program growth, as well as help the organization just have a healthier mix of opportunity. When we look at those conversations, since we are a platform with tools, et cetera, we kind of sometimes start with the basics. I understand you've turned this tool on, but tell me, is it truly working for you to the way you wanted it to, enough where you'll speak about it externally? And sometimes that's a journey. We get really excited about some of our new items, especially as we're moving into AI. And so we would love for customers to talk about it the moment they turn it on. But, we continue to have those conversations to make sure they're comfortable with the progress and comfortable with sharing outside of their organization. That means they have to have a level of understanding of their value and have crafted a bit of a message in order to share that. So hopefully they've shared it internally, and then are feeling confident as they move forward with that external sharing.
And we're going to get into the nitty gritty, the tactical in a second, as far as like, what are you measuring very specifically? But as we segue into that, can you kind of summarize what the value has been for you in doing the legwork and the homework and having the conversations with your internal stakeholders? And how has that allowed you to be more successful with actually measuring quantitatively success?
Wow. How that leads to the measurement, I'll have to give that thought for 1 second as I think through this. Developing relationships across the silos that you typically have in an organization of our size strengthens awareness of our program. And it also shows value to each of those people so that they want to help give back. So it does streamline conversations down the road because they know what I'm asking for. They know I need it. And some of them become proactive in terms of offering that. I would say then, I guess, how it would translate into the metrics is allowing me to fill those gaps more quickly. If I've established at least the beginning of a relationship as a new tool is coming on board or a new service is being offered, if we have an understanding of why we want these customers to share once they're successful, because a product manager might not always get it. They have no idea what customer advocacy is or what we do. And so educating them is going to help the whole organization succeed with new items or new ways of delivering things faster, I think.
I like that. I have always found that if I can find a way that we have a mutual investment in the program, it just makes everything easier. And I love that you're calling out those specifics, and also that you mentioned the proactivity. Like, that's the gold, right? When you can have internal stakeholders come to, hey, Kristin, I thought you might want to look at this customer, or I thought you might want to take a look at, this particular opportunity. That at least for me anyway, that was always when I don't have to go hunt and I can
Yes.
gather, how great is that?
It is a rare thing, but we continue to work on it. And my colleague has coined a term that we've been using a little bit internally about that, the way you termed it, investment. We see this whole thing as kind of a circular economy where when people give, they're going to be able to take. And so we try to remind them, here's what I'm giving you because I know that you're going to give back to me. And we're all going to be one big, happy, successful team.
It's like the penny tray at the gas station, or everyone just nobody pays with cash anymore, but it's still there sometimes where it's like give a penny, take a penny, and it all ends up balancing out. So I know people are really they love hearing about. So how do I do it? What are some things that I can measure? And I feel like this will almost be kind of like a lightning round. Can I just ask you a stakeholder, and will you share with us what you are measuring and how you've been able to have some success? And let's start with sales. They're of course the big one. So yeah, what are you measuring, and how are you showing the value and impact from an advocacy perspective?
We are measuring the revenue influence for each of our sales engagements. And that is critical, I think, for any customer advocacy program at this stage of the game. You have to be able to show value to the bottom line. I can show to a VP of sales what revenue I have touched in their region. I can show my CMO what revenue I have touched across the whole year. And then that can trickle further up the ELT chain. It really is our number one KPI.
And and I'm just curious because I also love talking about goals. Do you communicate that out as well, just to the sales team? Obviously the impact at the executive level, but is that something that you're pretty transparent with as far as sales and even identifying kind of like the real champions?
We are getting there. We have not released the revenue numbers in terms of a goal. Our goal, we just tell them we're going to support you in any way we can. We really try to be an amazing partner to them. Where we are trying to measure a little more closely is what have we delivered in the number of acts of advocacy into your region. And how many of those acts of advocacy are coming out of your region? Because we want to see a really healthy balance of give and take within the program as well. And so that balance is critical as we move forward, because if a region is struggling, then we need to be able to have the data to show sales management, well, we can get some additional growth here if you invest, drop your penny in the bucket of advocacy, and then we'll just have that much more richness to give back to you. So help us help you.
I love that. That's so smart. I hadn't even thought about that. Reporting on, I love that you do it by region, so you can get very specific with the different sales teams, and you can show the revenue influence, but then also what's coming out of that. Okay, that's thrilling. I have a meme that's developing with the penny tray, and you and I'll have to kind of put our heads together. It's got potential, I think.
All right.
What about marketing? So that's the next one. I'm kind of going through the list that I'm usually asked most frequently, and obviously within marketing, there's different components. So if you want to break those apart, if it's events, if it's working with the content team, etc. But yeah, what are you measuring from that perspective?
I'll start with our influencer relations. We pair really closely with them because we know that the analysts out there, et cetera, they need real world proof, and that is coming from the customers. And so we do measure how many surveys or interviews we deliver to them, or even one-to-one meetings at events. And so we also can put customers into influencer events, which crosses over into the events themselves. So we have a nice, healthy events team, and they're working, again, globally. We work to put customers into our internal events and external events that they're supporting. And again, we measure how many speakers do we place to you, but we also then look at how many people are in the audience. And we look at those marketing responses for the audience, because it's very important on the marketing side to understand, here's how many times my customer spoke, and then here are how many pairs of ears heard the message. You have to understand how broadly your message is being received. You want to make sure it's not being lost in the dark somewhere. Make sure that it's in the right channels. And if you believe in a channel and you're seeing really good growth in terms of the revenue that was there, but there wasn't a lot of attendance, then you can give some advice back to the events team of, we saw this from our perspective. Here was the revenue that we saw, and how can we help get more people to that event? Can we share it with our members? Can we at least, put it in a newsletter just for awareness? What can we do to help? So the events team is a lot of fun because our members really enjoy those engagements. Our developer team, it's a new team for Teradata. So developer marketing, we're working on amplified growth there for 2024, making sure they understand there's a whole developer community out on our website, and then building the number of those personas who are in the program. So right now we're actively reaching out saying, hey, you're already a developer role and you're in the program. We want to make you aware of this community, and we've developed new activities that are specific to your role that we think you want to take part in. Let's talk about these new fun things that you can do. And they are activities like blogs and demo videos, things that we know a developer persona is really keen to do because it builds their own career. And it's something that goes on their resume. It's something they can show their boss of, this is the cool stuff I'm doing, and these are the results. So that one's been exciting.
I'm feverishly jotting down some notes here, and I want to come back to both of these. So go back to the events for a second. I love that you called out the number of eyeballs or the number of ears, right? That because the audience, that does matter. And the fact that you then have open communication. I think that's missing a lot when we talk about the measurement and the metrics is again, two-way, not one way, right? Like, oh, okay, I fulfilled this request. It came to advocacy. I got a customer. They did the thing. And then that's it. And there's not, well, what happened? How many people? Another question that I'm asked often, so I'd love your expertise on this. I assume you take that information, and as far as revenue influence, you can say like, okay, and these were the people that were in attendance. How do you stay on top of that? It just seems a struggle for a lot of us. So,
yeah, it can be very manual. As I said, sales has so many requests on their own plates. We don't capture all of the data that we could, because we do realize there is a time to benefit cost there. And so we capture what we can. And I feel like the data we get is representative of that event, even if it's not entirely complete. So while I'd love to get every last little scrap of revenue influenced, for our own proof of value, as long as we can show that we are putting our resources in the right direction with that sample data, I feel like we're really where the organization needs us to be right now.
I like that. You don't, yes, you always want it all, but again, prioritization. What can you extract, and what can, you measure, and what can have an impact? The developers pieces would have to have a whole separate conversation because that's something I'm working on right now in a slightly different way.
Oh, okay.
But being able to engage a critical piece of your community, right? Of your customer base, or even internally to get those voices heard. Like in my world, work a lot with obviously people like you, that are customer marketers and advocacy professionals, but there's a Salesforce piece for us that's really important. And those administrators are like heroes in my mind. And I want more of that. So anyway, so that brings us to stories, right? How do you capture what someone's interested in? How do you hit that, whatever that is, that's going to, stick with them as part of a story? What about that piece of it? What about stories? And I know you have an EBC. So how are you measuring and delivering quantitative representation in those areas?
So we have not only the executive briefing center side of the team, we have a customer stories dedicated person. And so we directly with Peer Advantage help to deliver information to that stories person, but they're also kind of a dotted line into our team with all the visibility into the point of reference tool where we keep all of our profiles. So that core data is at the fingertips of the person developing external stories. The core data is at my fingertips, my teams, and we've even opened that up to the influencer team too, because we're the folks who are doing those deep dives into who's the right customer. And so we start with those beautiful profiles, and then we go to notes that we've built beyond there that do the deeper dive into the use case or the value being delivered. So it's a great system to point us in the right direction, and then do the further research once we've narrowed our options. The output, we would like to turn the library on in point of reference. We haven't done it yet for ourselves, but we see that as a really valuable way to do keyword searches so that we can take that deep dive information and get at it even faster, have it served up to us. So that'll be an efficiency for us. Right now, we do keep it offline, and it takes a little extra time, but it does allow us to have all the different asset types we want, the links we want, et cetera. Everything we know we can put into that library. So that's maybe something for 2025 for us.
And then measuring that, I mean, I assume, right, that's a nice component too, like what content or what stories or what customers are, high demand, or, how are these things being leveraged?
Yeah, and it's a pretty easy gut check for some of those high demand customers. But we definitely keep a track on when were they last used, how often have they been used. Our main priority is to be a protector of the customer so that our organization doesn't abuse them in any way. We always want them to engage with us voluntarily and feel that they're finding value in those engagements. So we're very, very careful to be gatekeepers for the larger organization to make sure the right things are going to them at the right time. The customer stories are being measured directly through our digital team, so we do know views there. Right now for support in the EBC, we're measuring just the engagement where customers are coming in and talking within the EBC. And we're also looking at then the revenue that might be coming out of that EBC. My larger global customer advocacy team is looking at the revenue from that EBC engagement. And that is something where the customer reference has contributed. So we, again, are measuring actual opportunities and revenue. And it's a three-pronged program that is just working beautifully the way that we're meshing together and delivering those stories in these different channels.
I was just going to say, and that's the key, right? I joke all the time about how many birds with one stone. But it's the different channels and it's the different avenues of leveraging customers in ways that they want to participate and they're excited to participate, and then the story and the different ways that you're leveraging that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember when we were speaking, you also have added like almost like a survey mechanism, right? In asking about whether it's NPS or getting some feedback. Haven't you? From customers?
Our EBC has NPS, and then we do a survey after our roundtables. And then we also support customers who give responses back to the larger organization to encourage that NPS on a larger scale.
And then, of course, I mean, I mentioned the customers, but what about from that member perspective, kind of the last piece of the puzzle and measuring and looking at impact?
Yeah, this is the most fun part. We look at what activities the customers have participated in, and we also look at when they participated. We can share that information back with them. Sometimes they'll say, my manager is new and wants to understand what I've been doing with your program. And so that data is at our fingertips and we can share that out. It's also at their fingertips, actually, because we have a member website. And so they can log in and look at it there. But again, we try to be full service. And so if they come to us asking, we're never going to tell them to go look it up themselves. We're going to pull all that data, package it up beautifully for them, and hopefully offer to them a little bit of feedback. We don't have anything established in a formal way, but when we thank them for an engagement, we do try to leave a little nugget in there that is a bit of feedback from whoever requested their engagement. Like, this was really valuable to them because, or you said this and it really resonated. And so trying to give them some feedback that your time and your effort mattered to this other team, that you weren't just giving us an hour of your time for no purpose. You really have helped someone along the way, because we want their engagement to always be an opportunity to network with others. We encourage them to ask questions when they're on conversations that they've been asked to host. And we want them to realize that at the end of the day, they're a valuable member of a community that serves a larger purpose. And that's to use data for good things. It's not data for data's sake.
I'm going to bottle that up. Everybody take note and replay the last, 35 seconds, because when I was an advocacy manager, and it was kind of an awakening. This was 10 years or so ago, and I do reference calls. I was setting up conversations, and I was amazed how many customers came back and said, so how did it go? Did you win the business? I mean, that the customers really do have an investment in what the activity that they participated in. And I just got into that practice that it was after every single reference conversation, whatever I could, I would provide back. It's exactly what you're describing, Kristin, to let them know the appreciation, of course, but then what did come from it? What happened with that particular opportunity, because they were interested. And sometimes they just wanted to also connect with that person again, to the networking piece of it. So it was, here's who you spoke with. If you had a great conversation and you want to keep professionally networking, that's fantastic. Here's, their information, assuming they were fine with that as well. And, here's what happened. That feedback loop, what you're saying, and I'm underscoring it, cannot be underappreciated or undervalued. It is so critical to offer that back to customers. So I love that.
I don't want it to ever feel transactional to them. I want it to feel like community and conversation. And then I'll add to the member metrics. We obviously use that for budgeting as well. Looking at when did they complete the activity versus when they're going to probably redeem points for business rewards. We are being very, very careful with budget. And so we want to be sure that we are estimating as closely as possible. Everybody is trying to be as predictive as they can, because we all know how this economy changes and how tech changes. And so that accountability, once again, in determining budget and not blowing it up because I didn't realize, oh my gosh, 100 more redemptions for this were going to come in than expected. I can look at that historical data and what's happening right now and what the sentiment is, and try to make those estimates.
And that actually, you teed that up perfectly, because I wanted to ask you, I have two more questions for you. And one of them was around, how do you use the data for good, to use your point, not just data for data's sake? And you mentioned, budgeting. So how have you taken those successes and then leveraged them for future practice? You mentioned budget. What about goals or other things that you've been able to, for good, right? You've been able to advance your program and the things that you're doing because you've taken the time to do the measurement.
Yeah, we definitely look at the trend historically, and COVID really challenged us. It threw everything for a loop. And so we've been rebuilding those trends in the new world. But I feel like we have a good grasp of where we are right now. Our company has also been in transition, the move to cloud, all of this AI work, the mix of customer availability in terms of what they're ready to talk about, because everything is moving so fast. Understanding the timelines of when they're going to be available and actually take action on those requests is leading us to I think a shorter window of understanding how quickly people might be spun up on a new topic. And then that will then translate into more activities faster, and then hopefully more redemptions faster, because we want them to turn around and use those business rewards for education and networking opportunities, such as going to events. And so by looking at that kind of holistically, you can take the data and you could study it all day, but some of it still comes back to a gut check based on what you know about those customers and their needs and their personalities and where you think they're headed. So it's a starting point, but you still have to take the human part into account, and then be flexible. You have to meet them where they are. If their needs change, you have to be ready to change the program.
And I think you are hitting the nail on the head, because I've long kind of fought for, it's both qualitative and quantitative. And I started using the phrase, like, when narrative and numbers come together, that's magical for me, because you can't have only one and you can't have only the other. I mean, you and I have been in this world long enough that there were the glory days. And I'm sure people who are newer to the space, they're like, what? There was once a time when you didn't have to measure? Actually, it was. And it was kind of a unicorn. Glorious. It was glorious. But now you have to do both. So I want to end on that note, and any final thoughts you have on that. So I think this profession is, you've said it is more art than science. So how do we, obviously the answer is yes, we should be touching on the qualitative, but say more about that and how these two things have to coexist.
So if you start with your KPIs for the year and you look at your results on an ongoing basis, I think you can determine your growth potential as a program. I think you can determine where the trends are and what your customers are going to need next, but it requires constant conversation, and that takes time. And I think that's probably where the reporting conflicts with the growth and that relationship management. You want, at least I'm a people person. I want to be talking to the people. And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I can't today because I have a bunch of reports I have to pull about all the conversations I had and what we did. And so it is a balance. But at the end of the day, if you don't invest in the people, you're not going to have anything to report on. So you cannot neglect that for the nuts and bolts of the program. It always has to come back to, what does my internal customer need? What does my external customer need? Am I serving them, and am I doing it efficiently?
And I think that that is beautifully said, and where the conversation, and we won't dig into it, today, but the technology, that the tools and the resources available to you that you can take advantage of to automate, to take the data and provide some of that reporting, so it does free up the time to still be able to focus on the people. So this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much, Kristin, for sharing so much of your experience and expertise with us. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was fun.
Thanks again for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please feel free to bookmark it wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to follow me, Alison Bukowski, on LinkedIn. And a special thank you to Point of Reference for supporting this podcast. For over 20 years, Point of Reference has been the Salesforce native solution to solve a myriad of customer advocacy and reference management challenges. It's our goal to elevate the professionals within this space to achieve business goals and drive their programs forward as vital to business success. Contact me to learn more.